A new face in the neighborhood. Kevin, a 27-year-old with a steady job in IT, lived in the heart of the city in a neighborhood that felt like family. It was a tight-knit community where everybody knew everybody else's business, or at least tried to. He was laid back, with an easy charm that most people found endearing. Tall and lean, with a neatly trimmed beard and a crooked smile, Kevin was the kind of guy who got along with everyone. He hung out with the same crew he'd known since high school: Justin, Dre, and Kenny. Guys who were always down for a good time and a laugh. Life was predictable in the neighborhood until the day Jasmine moved in. She was a stunning woman in her mid-20s, with rich, dark skin that seemed to glow under the city lights, and a confident walk that drew everyone's eyes. She moved into the duplex 2 streets over from Kevin, and as soon as she arrived, she was the center of attention. The men on the block couldn't stop talking about her. She was mysterious, well-dressed, and had an aura that demanded respect. Kevin noticed her right away. Unlike his friends, who immediately saw Jasmine as a challenge, Kevin was genuinely intrigued. He saw her at the corner store, at the park walking her dog, and at the local cafe where she sat alone, reading novels and sipping coffee. A few times their eyes met, and she flashed him a polite, warm smile, just enough to make his stomach flip. He wanted to get to know her, but he was hesitant. He didn't want to be another guy in a long line of admirers. He didn't want to approach her like she was a trophy to be won. But then came the house party. Dre's cousin was throwing a house party that Friday, and the whole neighborhood was buzzing about it. Dre told Kevin to come through, saying it was going to be the hottest party of the year. The night before the party, Kevin finally saw his chance to talk to Jasmine when he bumped into her at the neighborhood market. She was picking out a bottle of wine, debating between red and white, when Kevin cleared his throat and made his move. "Hey, if you can't decide, go with the red. It's a safe bet," he said with a friendly smile. She glanced up at him, and for a moment, he wondered if he'd said the wrong thing. But then she smiled back and grabbed the red. "Thanks, I was overthinking it," she laughed, her voice smooth and inviting. "No problem. I'm Kevin, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "Jasmine," she replied, shaking his hand with a firm, confident grip. They chatted briefly about wine and small things, and before he knew it, he was inviting her to Dre's cousin's party. To his surprise, she said yes. She was new to the area and wanted to get to know the neighborhood better. He walked away from that conversation with a strange mix of excitement and nerves, already picturing how the night would go. It felt like a small victory, a date with the woman everyone was talking about. Word spread fast, and by the next day, the guys in Kevin's circle knew he was bringing Jasmine to the party. They treated it like he'd already won some kind of prize. They slapped him on the back, made crude jokes, and teased him relentlessly. "Yo, Kevin, you actually pulled that fine new chick?" Justin asked, eyebrows raised in disbelief. "You better make it happen, bro. You know every dude in the neighborhood's been trying to get with her," Kenny added. "Don't mess this up, man." Dre was the worst of them all, a loud and boisterous hype man who always pushed things a little too far. "Man, you got her coming to the party with you. That's half the battle. You got to make your move tonight," Dre said, nudging Kevin's shoulder. Yeah, I hear you," Kevin replied, trying to keep it cool, but he felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. They were relentless, dropping hints that he had to be the first to get with her. When he tried to shrug it off, they doubled down, making it seem like a rite of passage, like he'd be proving something if he did it. Y'all need to chill. She's not a prize, Kevin said, a hint of irritation in his voice. But the guys just laughed it off. Just don't let her get away, Kenny said, serious for a moment. You don't want to be the dude that had a chance and fumbled it. On the night of the party, Kevin felt a mix of excitement and unease. Jasmine looked stunning when he picked her up, her hair flowing in curls around her shoulders, a fitted dress that hugged her curves, and a smile that made his stomach do somersaults. She was charming and polite, but there was a distance in her demeanor, a formality that he found intimidating. They arrived at the party a little after 10, and the house was already packed. Music pulsed through the walls. People were dancing in the living room, and the kitchen was filled with laughter and the smell of spiked punch. Dre spotted them first, throwing Kevin a knowing look as he approached. Kevin introduced Jasmine, and the guys gave her the kind of admiration that bordered on awe. Jasmine was friendly but reserved, staying close to Kevin and nursing a single drink slowly. As the night went on, she seemed almost too controlled, too composed. Kevin found himself getting nervous. She was beautiful, charming, but not giving him much to work with. She wasn't being cold, but he couldn't read her. She's a little stiff, don't you think? Dre said, sliding up next to Kevin when Jasmine went to the bathroom. You got to get her to loosen up. Yeah, she's a little reserved, Kevin admitted. He had to keep the conversation going, but it felt like she was holding something back. Kenny joined them, grinning slyly. Man, get her a few drinks. Make it a good night for both of you. Ain't nothing wrong with letting loose. Dre chimed in. I got some weed if you need it, just saying. Nothing heavy, just enough to chill her out. Trust me, you don't want her to be all uptight all night. Kevin hesitated, staring at his friends. I don't know. I'm not trying to force anything, man. Look, nobody's saying force it. Just set the mood. Make it fun, Dre insisted. You got her here. Make her want to stay. An hour later, Kevin found himself standing in the kitchen, holding 2 drinks. Jasmine was out back, sitting quietly on the patio, a faint frown on her face as she stared into the distance. He'd tried to make small talk, but something wasn't clicking. She wasn't cold, just distant. She's bored, Dre whispered in Kevin's ear, pushing a small blunt into his hand. Just chill, bro. Make it fun. Kevin looked down at the blunt and the drinks in his hands, feeling a tight knot in his chest. He wasn't sure if he should listen to his friends or trust his own instincts, but the pressure was mounting, and Jasmine wasn't opening up like he'd hoped. He didn't want to let the night end like this, awkward and unfinished. As he walked back out to the patio, he forced a smile, holding out one of the drinks. Jasmine looked up at him, a hint of curiosity in her eyes, and took the glass. He hesitated, feeling the weight of the night hanging over him, the pressure of the expectations his friends had piled on his shoulders. It felt like he was standing at a crossroads, the music thumping in the background, laughter echoing from the living room, and the cool night air pressing in around them. He didn't know what he'd do next, whether he'd follow through with his friend's plans or try to make a genuine connection. The uncertainty was almost unbearable, but for now, all he could do was wait, holding his breath, caught between the man he wanted to be and the man his friends expected him to become. Jasmine sipped her drink, the ice clinking against the glass, and looked at Kevin with an expression that was hard to decipher, half curious, half guarded. He felt like she was trying to figure him out, and he suddenly wondered if she could sense the turmoil churning inside him. He knew he should relax, should let the night unfold naturally, but Dre's voice was still in his ear, and the pressure sat heavy on his shoulders. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice almost too casual. "Of course," Jasmine said, her tone light but not quite inviting. He sat down, feeling the cool wood of the patio chair beneath him. They were outside the party, the noise a little more distant now, the music muffled by the thick glass of the sliding door. He lit the blunt, more out of nervousness than desire, and took a slow drag. The smoke burned his throat, but he held it in, trying to project a calm confidence he didn't feel. He offered it to her, not expecting her to take it. To his surprise, Jasmine took the blunt between two fingers and hesitated only a moment before bringing it to her lips. She took a short hit, coughing slightly before handing it back with a wry smile. "It's been a while," she said, laughing softly, and Kevin felt the tension ease just a fraction. They talked for a while, about the neighborhood, about her move, about mundane things like work and weather. She loosened up a little, but only a little, her answers thoughtful and guarded, as if she were choosing her words carefully. She leaned back in her chair, finally seeming more comfortable, but Kevin still couldn't shake the feeling that she was miles away. The conversation drifted and stalled, and he felt himself falling back into the familiar rhythm of talking to someone who was there, but not really there. He wondered if she was bored, if he was boring, if he'd somehow messed up already. Back inside, the party was getting louder. More people had arrived. The living room was packed with bodies swaying to the heavy bass, and the energy was electric. Jasmine seemed to pick up on it too. She stood, her eyes flickering back toward the house. "Let's go in," she said, her smile brighter now. "I feel like I need to actually see this party." Kevin led the way, feeling a little lighter as he followed her back inside. They pushed through the crowd, weaving between people dancing, talking, drinking. The living room was a sea of movement, the furniture pushed against the walls, a blur of faces and lights. Jasmine's eyes sparkled in the dim glow, and for the first time all night, she seemed to genuinely enjoy herself. Dre spotted them and made a beeline over, pulling Kevin aside with a grin that was a little too eager. "You're doing good, man," he said, his voice just barely audible over the music. "Just keep her close, you know what I'm saying? You got this." Kevin just nodded, feeling his gut twist. He hated the way Dre was treating this, like it was some kind of game. Jasmine was standing a few feet away, talking to one of the girls from the neighborhood, laughing at something she'd said. She looked happy, actually relaxed, and Kevin felt a strange pang of guilt as he watched her. "Come on, let's dance," he said, cutting Dre off and grabbing Jasmine's hand. She didn't hesitate, just followed him into the crowd, laughing as they found a space in the middle of the living room. They danced, at first awkwardly, then with more ease as the music seemed to loosen both of them. She was good, confident, graceful, not worried about the eyes on her. For a while it felt good, real. They moved together in rhythm, the beat pulsing around them, and for the first time, he thought he caught a glimpse of who Jasmine really was. Unafraid, strong, playful. But then he saw Kenny, standing on the other side of the room, making a crude gesture and nodding towards Jasmine, giving Kevin a thumbs up with a knowing smirk. It was like a bucket of cold water, and the doubts rushed back in. They took a break from dancing, breathless and sweaty, and found a quieter corner near the kitchen. Jasmine seemed more at ease, her movements looser, the drink in her hand almost forgotten. Kevin leaned against the wall, trying to think of something to say that wouldn't sound forced, but Jasmine beat him to it. "You seem different from your friends," she said, her eyes searching his face. Kevin hesitated. He wanted to ask what she meant, but he was afraid of the answer. Instead, he shrugged. How so? She studied him for a moment, then looked away, twirling her drink in her hand. I don't know. It's just the way you look at things. Like you're here, but not really into all of this. She gestured vaguely to the party around them. Kevin felt a flush of embarrassment. Yeah, I like to have fun, but I don't know. Sometimes it feels like everyone's just trying too hard, you know? She laughed, a soft, knowing sound. Exactly. He felt a surge of relief, a feeling that maybe she got it. Maybe she understood him in a way his friends never did. For a moment, he forgot about Dre, Kenny, and the blunt in his pocket. It was just him and Jasmine, a spark of connection in a room full of noise. But then, the moment faded. She looked down at her empty glass and sighed. I think I need some fresh air again. Kevin hesitated. He knew if they went back outside, they might lose the energy they built, but he didn't want to push. He nodded, leading the way back to the patio. Outside, it was quieter. The night had settled, the distant hum of the city merging with the music inside. Jasmine sat down, looking tired but content. Kevin felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He pulled out the blunt, half gone, and lit it again. This time, she didn't hesitate to take it when he offered. They passed it back and forth in comfortable silence, the smoke curling up into the night sky. Jasmine leaned back, looking more relaxed than she had all night, her eyes half closed. Kevin felt a strange sense of peace, but it was tinged with something else, something uncomfortable, like he was standing on the edge of a decision he couldn't quite make. She turned to him suddenly, her eyes locking onto his. Why did you invite me tonight? She asked, her voice softer than before, almost vulnerable. He opened his mouth to answer, but the words caught in his throat. He wasn't sure what to say. Should he tell her the truth, that he was genuinely interested, or admit the pressure he felt from his friends? He hesitated, caught between honesty and the expectations weighing on him. I just wanted to get to know you, he said finally, but even to his own ears, it sounded like a half-truth. Jasmine's gaze didn't waver, and he wondered if she knew exactly what was going on. She took another slow drag from the blunt and let the silence linger, a quiet, unspoken question hanging in the cool night air. Kevin felt his phone buzz in his pocket, a text from Dre asking where he was, but he ignored it. Jasmine seemed to sense his distraction and sat up, brushing a stray curl from her face. Your friends are watching us, she said suddenly, nodding toward the living room window where he saw Dre, Kenny, and Justin peeking out, laughing about something. Kevin's heart sank. He realized he was on display, that they were waiting for him to make a move, that he was failing their silent test. He didn't know what to say. He tried to laugh it off, but the tension was back, tighter than ever. Jasmine's smile was gone now, replaced by a look of understanding he didn't like. She seemed to see through him, past the facade he was struggling to keep up. I should probably head home soon, she said, standing up and smoothing down her dress. She was pulling away, and Kevin felt panic rise in his chest. He didn't want the night to end like this, unfinished, uncertain, with nothing resolved. He stood too, reaching out as if to stop her. Kevin grabbed Jasmine's hand to stop her from leaving. Please, don't go just yet. Have another drink with me. Kevin felt a wave of relief when Jasmine paused, looked at him with curiosity, and said, All right, why not? Her guarded expression softened,
and he sensed that she was giving the night one more chance. With a smile, he took her hand and led her back inside, the warmth of her fingers against his sparking something almost hopeful inside him. They made their way through the crowd, dodging people swaying to the beat. When they reached the kitchen, Kevin poured Jasmine another drink, a lighter one this time, something that wouldn't hit as hard as the shots she'd been taking earlier. She accepted it with a small smile and sipped slowly. Just then, a voice boomed over a microphone, drawing everyone's attention. "All right, party people, it's time for some drinking games," the voice announced. The crowd responded with cheers and whistles, the energy in the room surging. Jasmine raised an eyebrow at Kevin, her face brightening. "You in?" he asked, and she nodded eagerly. They followed the noise into the living room, which had been cleared for the games. A circle of excited faces had already formed, a mix of partygoers standing and sitting on the floor, drinks in hand. In the center stood a tall guy with a microphone, holding up a stack of cards. His voice carried over the chatter as he explained the rules. "The game is called I'll Drink to That. And it is simple," he said, grinning. "I'll read a card, and if it applies to you, you take a drink. No cheating." He held up the first card dramatically, and the crowd quieted down, eyes fixed on him. He cleared his throat and read aloud, "If you're wearing the color red, take a drink." Laughter rippled through the group as half of the people, including Kevin, raised their cups and took a swig. Jasmine laughed, her eyes bright as she joined in. Kevin watched her closely, glad to see her easing up, the tension in her shoulders slowly fading. All right," the host said, smiling as the room buzzed with anticipation. He pulled another card from the stack. "If you're wearing eyelashes, take a drink." Jasmine's eyes widened, and she burst out laughing, playfully nudging Kevin. "That's me," she said with mock exasperation, before lifting her drink and downing another shot. Kevin joined in her laughter, feeling the weight of the night lightening just a little. The game went on, the group getting louder and more boisterous with each round. Some cards were innocent and funny. "If you've ever lied about your age, take a drink," while others grew a bit more daring. Each prompt was met with cheers, groans, or bursts of laughter. Jasmine handled the game like a pro, her competitive side coming out as she teased others who had to drink while dodging a few rounds herself. Kevin was starting to see a different side of her, playful, confident, a little flirty. For a moment, he wondered if he'd judged her too quickly earlier. She seemed genuinely happy, genuinely present, and he found himself caught up in the fun of it, letting his worries about Dre, Kenny, and Justin fade into the background. But as the night wore on, the shots piled up. Kevin noticed that Jasmine's movements were growing slower, her laughter a little louder and slurred. She was holding her drink a little too loosely, and he knew she was nearing her limit. His own vision was starting to blur around the edges, the alcohol warming his skin and muddling his thoughts, but he knew he needed to keep it together. The host held up another card, his voice barely cutting through the buzz. "If you've ever," he began, but Jasmine shook her head, leaning in close to Kevin. "I think I'm done," she said, her voice soft and a bit unsteady. "I need to go home." Kevin hesitated. For a split second, he thought about suggesting they stay, about asking her to dance again, to let the night stretch on a little longer. But he could see the fatigue in her eyes, the way she was starting to pull back into herself. "Yeah, okay," he said, forcing a smile. "Let's get out of here." They gathered their things, but as they headed for the door, Dre intercepted them. He caught Kevin's arm, pulling him aside. "Yo, you can't be leaving already," he said, his eyes darting to Jasmine, who was leaning against the wall, looking ready to collapse. "You've got her right where you want her, man. Don't punk out now." Kevin's face tightened, the weight of his friend's expectations crashing back down on him. He glanced at Jasmine, who was rubbing her temples with a tired smile. She looked at him, half hopeful, half wary, and he knew she was waiting for him to make the next move. Yeah, I know," he said, trying to shake off Dre's grip. "I'm just making sure she's good." "All right." Dre laughed, slapping him on the back. "Do what you gotta do, but don't mess this up. You don't want to be the joke tomorrow." Kevin felt his face burn with embarrassment, the words stinging more than he wanted to admit. He gave a short nod and returned to Jasmine, who gave him a curious look. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Let's get you home." The drive to Jasmine's place was quiet, the streets nearly empty under the hazy glow of the streetlights. Jasmine leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur by with a dreamy, faraway look in her eyes. Kevin kept his eyes on the road, his thoughts racing. He knew his friends would be waiting for an update tomorrow, waiting for a story. He didn't want to disappoint them, but he also didn't want to force something that wasn't right. They pulled up to Jasmine's apartment, a small brick building on a quiet street. She fumbled with her keys as she climbed out of the car, and Kevin hurried around to help her. She smiled gratefully, her face flushed from the alcohol. "Thanks," she said softly. He offered his arm, and she took it, leaning on him a little as they walked up the stairs. Her apartment was on the second floor, and by the time they reached the door, she was swaying slightly, the exhaustion catching up with her. She paused at the door, turning to him with a smile that was half teasing, half shy. "You're a gentleman, you know that?" she said, reaching out to steady herself against his shoulder. "You didn't have to help me." Kevin shrugged, feeling an odd mix of pride and anxiety. "It's no big deal," he said. "I just wanted to make sure you got home safe." She hesitated, her hand lingering on his arm, her eyes searching his face as if trying to read his thoughts. "Do you want to come in for a bit?" she asked. His breath caught. He knew this was the moment, the decision that would shape the rest of the night. He thought of his friends, of the pressure they'd put on him, of the chance to prove something. But he also thought of Jasmine, of the way she'd smiled when they were dancing, of the way she'd opened up just a little, even if she'd kept so much hidden. "Yeah," he said, his voice quiet. "Yeah, I'd like that." She unlocked the door and let him inside, flipping on a small lamp that cast a warm, soft light over the room. It was cozy, a little messy, with unpacked boxes still stacked against one wall, and a few pictures already hanging crookedly on the others. Jasmine flopped down onto the couch, her head leaning back against the cushions. Kevin bends down and helps her take off her shoes. She lay on the couch for a few minutes. "God, I'm exhausted," she said with a laugh, rubbing her eyes. "Tonight was something." Kevin sat down next to her, feeling the quiet settle around them. She was looking at him again, that same curious, almost vulnerable expression. He knew he could kiss her, could make a move now, and follow through with what his friends expected. But he hesitated, caught in the silence that stretched between them like a fragile thread. Jasmine stood up, still staring at Kevin. "Kevin, can you help me unzip my dress?" she asked. Yeah, I can do that for you, said Kevin.
He stands up from the couch and softly turns Jasmine around to unzip her. While unzipping her dress, Jasmine turns around and starts kissing him. Kevin continues to take her dress off, slowly pulling it down against her soft, rich, dark skin. He laid her on the couch, with the rest of the dress falling to the floor. Jasmine unbuckled his pants, and Kevin began stroking her. Jasmine, moaning with pleasure, wrapped her legs around him, allowing Kevin to go deeper inside her. The passion escalated, and the arousal deepened. Kevin lifted Jasmine's legs up and kept going, not realizing she passed out. Kevin softly asked, "Do you like that?" Then abruptly, Jasmine wakes up frantically, hitting Kevin and screaming, "Get off me! Get off me! What are you doing?" Kevin then gets off of her, scared out of his mind, trying to calm her down so she can see that it's him. "Jasmine, it's me, Kevin," he screamed. "Calm down. What's going on?"